What if dementia didn't begin with forgetting, but with letting go? Before the mind slips, something more invisible starts to happen. The brain begins to pull back from the world. Not loudly, but quietly people change, not in what they say, but in what they no longer do. And the shift is so subtle, it's often mistaken for aging, burnout, or just a bad week, but it's not. Studies indicate that the earliest stages of dementia often appear years before memory loss, through small, overlooked changes in everyday behavior. This video will reveal 9 strange things seniors stop doing that predict cognitive decline, so you can recognize the signs early and take action before it's too late. Let's begin with number 1. Stop taking initiative. Mary, 68, always led the charge during the holidays. She booked the flights, cooked the meals, even labeled each family gift. Then one year, she stepped back. Someone else should take over, she said. At first, her daughter was relieved, until Mary also stopped checking her calendar, paying the water bill, and confirming her doctor's appointments. Her energy wasn't just gone, it had shifted. 4 years later, she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. A study confirmed that loss of initiative and difficulty completing multi-step tasks often begin in the early stages of dementia, even before memory becomes a concern. The frontal lobe, responsible for goal-directed behavior, starts to falter. When this area weakens, the desire to start or finish even basic routines fades, making everyday responsibility feel optional. Even when the person still seems aware of the need, the person may still care about the outcome, but the drive to begin or follow through simply isn't firing, leaving important tasks unfinished or avoided entirely. Number 2, stop replying to messages. 3 years before diagnosis, Rob, age 72, slowly fell silent. He stopped replying to texts. He stopped returning calls. His voicemails filled up and stayed full. Even during in-person visits, he responded with one-word answers, or sometimes just a nod. His son thought he was just in a bad mood, but the change lingered. Rob, once witty and present, now looked like someone trying to keep up with a world that moved too fast. Experts report that withdrawal from communication is one of the earliest signs of cognitive decline. It's not about being rude or depressed. It's that conversations require attention, memory, and emotional responsiveness, all of which quietly start breaking down. For many, engaging in conversation starts to feel like juggling too many thoughts at once, and the brain slowly starts choosing silence instead. Responding becomes mentally draining, and even short exchanges feel overwhelming to process or follow through. Number 3, stop using familiar tools. Elaine, 74, had been using the same kitchen appliances for decades, but slowly, things changed. The microwave stayed unplugged. The coffee maker went unused. She stopped baking altogether and started eating yogurt or crackers for dinner. "I just don't feel like it," she said. But when her daughter asked how to use the rice cooker, Elaine stared at it like it was foreign. It wasn't until 2.5 years later that she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. Recent data suggests that early dementia affects procedural memory and sequencing, making once familiar appliances feel overwhelming or unsafe, even if the person hasn't forgotten what they are. Using tools like a microwave or vacuum may involve steps the brain no longer strings together easily, turning routine actions into something that feels mentally risky or confusing. This cognitive breakdown makes even the simplest tasks seem like monumental hurdles, leading to frustration and eventually avoidance of these once easy tasks. Number 4, stop driving at night. It was 3.5 years before diagnosis when Jerome, age 70, gave up night driving. "The lights are too bright," he said. "It's hard to see." But it wasn't just headlights. He began missing turns, slowing down at green lights and pausing longer than normal at stop signs. His wife noticed him scanning the road nervously, even on familiar routes. A study found that visual spatial processing and depth perception often deteriorate in the early stages of dementia, long before memory loss is obvious. Driving, especially at night, becomes disorienting and stressful. What once felt automatic now demands mental focus that the brain can no longer manage with confidence, especially in unfamiliar lighting or faster-moving traffic. Even the simple act of merging or reading road signs can become a source of confusion and hesitation. Number 5. Stop caring about appearance and cleanliness. Linda, 73, had always turned heads. Her makeup was flawless, her nails polished, and her outfits coordinated down to the earrings. But slowly, something changed. She began wearing the same outfit for days. Her hair stayed unbrushed. Her once favorite mirror stayed covered. And gradually, the changes went deeper. She began skipping showers, stopped brushing her teeth, and let body odor linger longer than usual. "I don't have the energy for all that," she told her daughter. It wasn't laziness. It was something else. This shift began nearly 4 years before she was diagnosed with frontotemporal dementia. Studies indicate that neglect of grooming and hygiene is often tied to early damage in motivation and reward systems, especially in dementia types affecting the frontal lobe. What once felt natural, bathing, brushing, preparing, no longer registers as meaningful or necessary. The brain stops triggering the urge to maintain appearance or cleanliness, even if the person is still physically capable of doing it. This isn't about vanity. It's about a fading internal compass that once signaled what mattered and why it was worth doing. Number 6. Stop watching new content. At 69, Teresa stopped watching new shows. "I can't follow what's going on," she said. She started rewatching old sitcoms, sometimes the same episode multiple times. When her daughter suggested a new series, Teresa declined. Even when she tried, she couldn't remember what had just happened or who the characters were. It wasn't boredom, it was confusion. 2 years later, she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. Scientists found that difficulty following storylines, retaining character relationships, and processing plot progression are common early signs of cognitive decline. Storytelling requires the brain to track sequences, update information, and remember relationships. When this function starts to fail, even passive entertainment becomes exhausting and eventually avoided altogether. Over time, the mind begins choosing repetition over novelty, retreating into what it already knows rather than facing the challenge of something new. Number 7. Stop managing finances. Carl was 75 when his wife noticed something wasn't right. A late fee on the credit card, a bounced check, a pension deposit forgotten in a drawer. This was a man who used to track every dime in a notebook, calculating tips in his head and never missing a due date. His wife thought maybe he was just slowing down, but soon he started mixing up account numbers and even mailed a blank envelope with no check. It was 2 years later when he was diagnosed with early-stage dementia. Findings confirm that money mismanagement often appears before any memory symptoms because financial tasks rely heavily on working memory, attention, and logical sequencing. The ability to manage finances isn't just about math. It involves recognizing patterns, forecasting consequences, and keeping multiple mental tabs open. When those processes decline, even paying a single bill can feel like a puzzle with missing pieces. Over time, what starts as forgetfulness becomes a cascade of missed payments, confusion, and vulnerability that quietly undermines independence. Number 8. Stop keeping things clean. It was 3 years before her diagnosis when Doris, age 71, began letting her spotless home fall apart. The once shining kitchen grew greasy. Laundry stayed in the basket for days. There was dust in places that had never collected dust before. "I'll do it later," she'd say. but the cleaning rarely happened. Her son watched her pick up a sponge, wipe one counter, then drift away to another room. Once, she forgot a wet load of laundry for a full week. Research confirms that loss of organization, task sequencing, and attention span can erode routine habits like cleaning, even when memory still seems sharp. Keeping a house clean isn't one big decision. It's dozens of tiny ones, repeated day after day. When dementia begins, the mental thread connecting those small steps breaks. Focus fades, priorities blur, and the rhythm of routine vanishes. The result isn't neglect out of choice. It's confusion that builds with every unfinished task. Number 9. Stop showing emotion. Bill, 70, had always been expressive. Hugs, laughter, tears. But something shifted. When his first great-grandchild was born, he barely smiled. When a close friend passed away, he simply said, "That's life." During family celebrations, he seemed detached, even irritated by excitement. These changes crept in over time. It wasn't until 2.5 years later that he was diagnosed with behavioral variant frontotemporal dementia. A scientific review confirmed that loss of empathy, emotional flattening, and muted responses often precede memory decline, especially in dementia types that affect the brain's emotional regulation centers. When the circuits that fuel emotional resonance begin to degrade, the person may appear cold or indifferent, not because they don't feel, but because the neurological channels to express those feelings are slowly going offline. Over time, even meaningful events lose emotional impact, and familiar faces no longer stir the same warmth they once did. Don't wait for memory loss. Dementia often speaks first through what disappears: habits, interests, behaviors. If someone close to you has stopped doing the things that made them who they are, it's time to act. Because when dementia finally shows up in memory, it's already been unfolding for years.
And there you have it. What are your thoughts? Next, dive into this video for more essential tips to transform your health and help you thrive. You're going to love it. Thanks for watching Healthy End, and we'll see you there.